Conversations with Azu Ishekwele.
What happened to us as a people, as Nigerians? What happened to our humanity? It was Ghanaian writer Ayiko Yama who published a novel titled Why Are We So Blessed? Why is there so much bloodletting, so much killing, so much wanton destruction of property in our country? Have we always been like this? Question after question after question. I remember the episode we brought to you titled Danger of a Single Story. In brief, it was a sort of travelogue recounting Azu's trips to Delta and Enugu states and a road trip to Zamfara at a time when dominant media narratives created the impression that Nigerians could no longer sleep in their beds for fear of being killed or abducted. The risk analysis on Zamfara by Azu using ChatGPT reinforced the single story bias. The greater danger in such single stories is the tunnel vision they create in young people that Nigeria has always been a battle zone and a running space for kidnappers, bandits, robbers, terrorists, or Yahoo boys. But far from it. In fact, Azu says there was a time you could walk to a newspaper stand, pick your copy, drop the money, and go away without meeting the vendor in person. There was trust, honesty, compassion, and empathy. Robert Collis, an Irish medical doctor who died in 1975 and who worked with the then University College Hospital, Ibadan, in the 1950s, saw with his koro eyes, as we say in Nigeria, the Nigeria that today's single stories ignore. The Nigeria that many young people might think never existed. His book, A Doctor's Nigeria, contains an account from his travels that will make you wonder what happened to the peaceful, happy, and beautiful people. Welcome to Conversation with Azu, our weekly diary on life and politics. Our column is titled The Road to a Doctor's Nigeria. And Azu, the writer, is here with me to take some questions. Hello, Azu.
How are you, Julius? Thanks for having me once again.
Happy birthday once again. I hope you had a great day yesterday.
I didn't know you were good. I didn't know you would go there, but thanks so much. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Society is more educated, more technologically advanced, more religious, but then less concerned about human virtue. What is responsible for this? Could it be parenting? Could it be leadership? Or a mix of all of these factors?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's really concerning, and I think it's a combination of the factors that you have mentioned. But let me say straight up that I'm not one who, who thinks that the current generation is totally incapable of experiencing any good thing. That every good thing happened in the past. I do not believe that. I believe that there are still some good things happening, but and which are perhaps not sufficiently amplified. But then we cannot deny the fact that we are living in a significantly different time and season from what it used to be for many reasons. And yes, you have mentioned a number of them. What Nolly, call in his book prebendal politics. It's sort of politics that we have come to experience in recent times when politics is hardly again about issues, about policies, about the peoples, more about the parties and about the characters in the parties.
About interest.
About interest. Well, it's politics has always been about interest, but it's not really about service as we know it, and commitment to that service and accountability for service. So that's part of the problem. The not just identity politics, but the normalization, if you like, of normalization of politics of exclusion, so it's basically about the very narrow interest of the people involved, and nobody really cares. That's part of the problem. That part of the problem is also socialization, because that's a very important factor in every community. Most people are now socialized differently. Part of it as a result of technology, part of it as a result of lived experiences. So socialization is different from what it used to be. There's also been, I think, significantly, an explosion in population. which unfortunately the country and many communities, especially in Africa and Nigeria, are not able to manage as effectively. And so the sense of communality that we used to have growing up, knowing your neighbor, being interested in what is happening, going out there, that's all part of the socialization and acculturation
Acculturation.
an acculturation process. All of that is no longer what it used to be for us. And then, of course, we cannot now wake up and begin to wonder what has happened. If the system, the value system is completely warped and different from what it used to be. That's another strong factor, of course. All it seems we are interested in today is about money. And we also find that pop culture has amplified this madness, for money and for material possession, well and over values that actually bind and highlight our common humanity.
There's a personal story you shared in your email newsletter that I was privy to, of how a young neighbor parked your car right inside your premises and called an Uber and rode off without an apology or even remorse. And that does seem to be like a one-off. It signals an underlying social problem, some of which you already mentioned.
Yes.
But how did you resolve this matter in the context of the column we're discussing?
Growing up, my mom used to say that your neighbor is your brother, because if you are in distress or there's a problem, your neighbor is the person that gets to you first before family. So, and that's the value so when that unfortunate incident happened within the premises or within the compound, I didn't think, it was something to make a fuss out of. But it turned out that my neighbor from, I don't want to say, my neighbor from the other part of God knows where, just didn't think that she owed me an explanation or even some sort of empathy for what has happened. She just, as you said, bolted and then left me to my misery. Then of course I had no option than to insist that since that was the way she wanted the matter resolved, she had to fix the car, and then of course she did. It was entirely at her expense, and
I'm glad to hear that.
Yes.
All right, I'll bring you an excerpt from Azu's column, and a very interesting one. And please take a listen. I quote, "Many Nigerians in their late 20s and early 30s might find it hard to believe there was indeed such a country where you were not afraid to travel alone at any time and didn't need to share your live location or use Google Map to get there safely. Safety feels like a very distant memory, a nightmare. On my 2 recent road trips to Zamfara and Benue states, my wife kept a vigil and sneaked anointing oil and rosary into my luggage despite a military escort." End of quote. Well, let's go back to Robert Collis' work.
Sure.
Yes. And he could practically walk in on Prime Minister Tafawa Balewa, who was living in his mother's home.
Yes.
And he was unencumbered by security, no airs, no protocol. That must read like some moonlight tale.
Indeed. He also on that journey, he also went to see Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe.
Okay.
On that,
yes. Nigeria's first Governor General.
Yes, and Nigeria's first president, ceremonial president, and leader of the NCNC. So he went to see him on that trip also without much fuss, So what has happened? It's interesting how. And I do not want to blame politicians 100% for all that has happened. We also must take responsibility. But it's important how it's interesting how things have changed to a point where if you need to visit a big man, a politician, you have to book your appointment days, and then before you can even make it through the coterie of
AIDS
protocol and metal dictator. It's almost like. Honestly, I can't describe the experience, but I think unfortunately we have created a monster of sort of community that, and then we are all then victims of the monster, the Frankenstein monster that we created. So politicians today will not live in their mother's houses; they live in their castles, not saying it's bad to live in a castle if you have earned one. They are not accessible. They're afraid of the same monster that they have created by the poor choices that they have made and which we have endorsed.
All right, you drew a very insightful analogy between Collis' work and Achebe's book, There Was a Country. And we always talk about the country and its leaders. How about the people?
That brings me to what a friend of mine, I think it's Mr. Taiwo Yedele, the chairman of the presidential
tax reform team.
He said during one of the meetings that I attended that sometimes it's easier to speak truth to power than to speak it to the ordinary people. Because everybody takes a stone and it's easy to, So, but I mean, to the question of
what happened to the people?
The question of what happened to the people. I think also that, as I said, I mean, it's not the situation in which we have found ourselves is not only the making of politicians. I think that we also have to take some responsibility, because when we keep endorsing some of the things that politicians do by the choices that we make, by the things that we are telling them that that we deserve more of what they're doing. So we also need to stand up. And I know it's not very easy to hold people in power accountable, especially in this part of, for all sorts of reasons, because they just sort of shut themselves in and they live in a bubble and barricade everyone. But if we want a better society, then we must take responsibility for forcing the change that we believe we all need to live in a much better society. And also, I think it's important for us to go back to our community again, to go back to the family and to go back to the home and to see how we can, look ourselves in the mirror. And some of those values that we look back to, with nostalgia, it's possible to recreate some of those things. And there's never been a time in the history of man where we have such extraordinary capacity to create good as much as we have to create evil.
All right, my final question. If you had to choose between Robert Collis' Nigeria and today's Nigeria, where would you rather be?
I would be in today's Nigeria, but in spite of, he's shocked. But yeah, I'll be in today's Nigeria, but I would accept the responsibility that because there's no point getting lost in the past, getting lost in nostalgia. The challenge is how to make the moment better, with the resources that it is, and with the choices that we make. I think that's what, I mean, I love my country, and I will not trade my country or my community for anywhere else. But I accept that I have a much greater responsibility because of the current challenges that we face, to make better choices, to make my little corner brighter than it currently is. And I think if we all individually take that responsibility, I believe Nigeria will be a much better place.
All right. Individual responsibility is at the heart of it. So Nigeria happens to us as much as we happen to Nigeria. And that is where we draw the curtain on today's episode. And for more of this, you can visit our articles. You can read our articles on azuishekwene.com. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. Thanks for coming on the show, Azu.
Thanks for having me once again, Julius. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Bye for now.
Conversations with Azu Ishekwene.